Okay. Now we're ready. Okay. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us on today's episode of Can You Repeat That podcast? We're your hosts. My name is Leslie.
My name's Chantal.
And I am Atlas.
Intro music.
Music.
All right. Let me get back to my notes and make it bigger so I don't accidentally skip around. Okay. Have y'all ever heard of June or Jennifer Gibbons?
The Silent Twins. I wondered if that's who you were talking about when you said earlier that we'd get it.
I'm always impressed by how much you know.
I don't want to know about them. This is one of those exceptions. I learned about them a few years ago, and I
They're
don't want to know.
interesting. They're
That's
interesting, to say the least.
certainly an adjective for them.
Yes. Shanti, have you ever heard of June or Jennifer Gibbons, also known as the Silent Twins?
Surprise, I have not.
Okay. Not shocking. Shanti doesn't know movies or true crime, and Atlas knows all the things.
Don't expose me.
It's okay. It's okay. Anywho, so we'll start, I guess, from the very beginning. So Gloria and Aubrey Gibbons relocated from Barbados to the United Kingdom in the early 1960s. Gloria was a housewife, and Aubrey worked as a technician for the Royal Air Force. They had already had a couple of children, but in 1963, they gave birth to a pair of identical twin girls who they named June Allison and Jennifer Lorraine in Wales. June says that in the Insider Story documentary, when they were babies, quote, "We were very happy then. We were happy. We knew we were twins at that age. We had each other and we didn't need anybody else, really. We had each other." Both girls were delayed speaking, and on top of that, they did both have a speech impediment that made them very hard to understand. The girls got tired of having to repeat themselves after a while, and June would say later that their own mother would have to guess what they were saying. The speech delays, the speech impediments, and trouble understanding her own daughters would understandably cause her to worry about their future. Gloria would describe the children as shy, and the more that people couldn't understand the girls made them retreat into their own world even more. Oh, I forgot sources. Sources for the story are Inside Story, Silent Twin, Without My Shadow on Amazon, All That's Interesting, City Population Index, Goodreads, and BBC. Eventually, the girls would develop their own little secret language and only speak to each other and sometimes their younger sister named Rosie. It was thought that their language was a sped up version of click language in Creole. Their father, Aubrey, would say that if you asked one of the girls a question, they would have to look at the other as sort of approval before answering. He thought that this was just something that twins did universally. He didn't realize that it was something, unique to them. Annoyed and frustrating at having to repeat themselves, June would say, quote, "If you can't hear us now, you can't hear us never," end quote, and decided to stop speaking entirely. Eventually, the girls did go silent, even towards their own family. They wouldn't eat in front of them. They wouldn't drink in front of them. I mean, they were just there.
It got weird, yeah.
Yes. Like I did read somewhere that the girls would actually eat dinner in their bedroom. Their family would deliver them food to outside their door. And sometimes they'd eat, sometimes they wouldn't. And then they'd put the food back outside after they ate or whatever. But they wouldn't do normal, quote, normal. You'll hear me say normal a few times, at least, in this episode, which I can't stand describing something as normal because what is normal, but out of the ordinary. They would have very different behaviors. I also read that they did have a super big imagination. Like they would put on little stories with dolls and all kinds of stuff, and they would make like little plays and stuff with their little sister Rosie. But eventually Rosie would move out of their bedroom because they were sharing, those three, the twins and Rosie were sharing a bedroom. And once Rosie moved out of that bedroom, they stopped talking to her completely too. So
Update. I have actually heard bits and pieces of this. Now that you've gone into it, I just didn't know my name.
okay, cool.
But I know a tiny bit about this one.
Okay. Well, maybe you'll learn something that you didn't know before.
Heck yeah.
Yes. The family relocated in 1974 when the twins were 11 years old to Haverfordwest in Wales, and the girls attended a local county school. So something important to note that today in Haverfordwest, there's a population of about 12,000 people. Of those 12,000 people, only 71 are Black. So imagine back in 1971 when they moved there, what the population probably looked like. June, Jennifer, and their older brother, who were the only Black people in their school, were bullied due to racism and the twins' silence. They were picked on by other students pretty often, and in order to, quote, fix this, their teachers would let the three out of class 5 minutes early to get a head start home and avoid the bullying. It really sucks.
Yeah, that's the right solution, definitely.
I was going to say, it really sucks that instead of correcting the students that were bullying them, the siblings were taken out of school early. Because, I mean, 5 minutes a day over, however long they went to school there, it does have a negative to it. And it sucks that they were basically punished for other people's racism and bullying. So,
I mean, I don't see it so much as a punishment, but more it's just like it's not addressing the issue. It's like it's not gonna do anything.
Yeah. Yep. And then my next line says the staff weren't really solving the problem, but I guess at the time that's what they thought would be, I don't want to say best, but easier. So the twins' strange tendencies weren't just noted by their family, teachers, and fellow classmates, but even by people they were only around for a few minutes at a time. In the Amazon documentary, it states that during a vaccination session, when all the other students were wincing and feeling uneasy about their vaccinations, the girls were calm and didn't look away when vaccinated, which struck the staff as a little different. John Rees, the medic administering the vaccinations, described them as doll-like. And if y'all have anything that I'm not saying, feel free to interrupt me to insert whatever it may be, because there's so much information, because we'll see a few years in the future, they get diaries and they have so much writing. So
I do remember reading about them that when they did speak, before they went completely quiet, they purposely became more idiosyncratic with their language. It became completely unintelligible to others, which is an example of cryptophagia, secret language that a lot of twins have been documented to have, or weird actions and things like that. I do remember reading about that, but no one else could understand them but them. By the time they finally just decided, we're just going to stop talking altogether.
Yes. June and Jennifer weren't unaware at how unusual or different their behavior was. In fact, they even had a ritual of praying every night before bed for strength to be able to talk to others, including their own family. Concerned for the children, the school and their parents decided it would be best to get them into speech therapy. The therapist was not successful in breaking through to the children or ending their silence. However, she would be the first to notice a darkness to the twins and even wrote, quote, Jennifer sat there with an expressionless gaze, but I felt her power. Entered my mind that June was possessed by her twin. She also stated she thought June wished to speak to her, but was being compelled not to do so by Jennifer. So there's a power dynamic between the two. Jennifer seems to be more, I guess, in control of June. And June seems to be a little more scared, or more of a people pleaser for Jennifer specifically. The decision was...
That's kind of terrifying.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Oh, another thing that I just remembered too is that their parents would say that one would start a sentence and the other would finish it. And they did also intentionally try to do everything in sync. You can go on YouTube, or if you have Amazon Prime, you can watch that documentary that I mentioned in the beginning. And there's videos of them moving, and they are like a mirror. It's insane.
It's creepy. It's creepy. I've seen a couple of them. It's disturbing. It's it's two people, one brain in some cases.
Yeah. I can send you a link, Shanti. There is a lot of video of these girls, so it's really interesting to be able to look back on. And this isn't the movement, but it is just a little, I guess, clip of how she speaks as an adult. And you'll see, even then, it's so hard to understand. Whenever I sent you that video with Miki watching TV.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God.
Yeah. So they move together, as one.
That.
It's a little creepy.
All right.
how in sync they are. The decision was made to separate the twins and enroll them in different schools. The hope was this would give the girls a chance to be independent and develop their own identities. When the twins were told they were no longer going to be together, they were quickly enraged, but not at the adults in their life, but at each other, and they started fighting and screaming, almost as if they blamed the other for what was happening to them. While separated, both twins retreated further into their own worlds. June specifically was uncontrollable. She would not eat, she wouldn't use the toilet, and she would cry to the point of tears, snot, and drool hung from her chin like a beard. She wouldn't.
Fascinating mental image right there.
Yes, a beard of snot and drool. And, fun fact, did y'all know that when you cry, the reason why your nose is runny is because it's actually tears going from your tear ducts down into your nasal passage and through your nose?
I did know that, yes.
Interesting, huh? Anywho, the girls weren't separated too long before the adults in their lives saw this wasn't working and decided to put them back together, mostly so that June could function again. We're fast forwarding to when the girls are 16. Now, the behaviors that I've already spoken about have continued, if not gotten worse. June would say, quote, one day she'd wake up and be me, and one day I would wake up and be her. And we used to say to each other, give me back myself. If you give me back myself, I'll give you back yourself. The girls still weren't speaking to their family. In fact, it said that family dinners were silent if the girls actually sat at the dinner table, and their older sister would actually start crying and getting upset and frustrated because the girls were not speaking. I imagine that this puts a ton of stress on the family as a whole, not just the parents and the twins specifically. Kind of like whenever a family has a sick child and all their attention goes to the one child, and in order to keep them healthy and safe and protected, but the second child is sometimes just, left behind a little bit. The stress must have
Which
been...
honestly probably didn't help the situation.
Oh, no. Definitely would exacerbate it.
So it's like resentment was building from everybody.
Yeah.
The girls didn't really have an outlet until they were gifted journals by their parents. The girls found their passion in writing so much so that they actually enrolled in a course for writing, which doubled as a form of self-expression and some, again, I hate this word, normality. They began writing their own stories and even published some, one being titled The Pepsi Cola Addict, written by June in 1982 when she was 19. But even their writing had a darker tone. Most of their stories involved an attractive younger person committing crimes or having some sort of sexual situation. According to Goodreads, the main character in The Pepsi Cola Addict is named Preston, and he is, quote, deeply in love with his girlfriend Peggy, but she dumps him after an argument over his Pepsi habit. His friend Ryan is bisexual and desires him. His math tutor seduces him, and when he's sent to juvie after robbing a convenience store, memorized by a crate of Pepsi, of course, he sits down and drinks some instead of running. That's how he's caught. He's molested by a guard. Preston's choices and misfortunes are chronicled with that distinctive Gibbons flair, full of elegant metaphors, quirky slang, and over and undercurrents of emotion that take on a life of their own. Apparently, only 5 libraries actually have a copy of this book, but there are bootlegger copies available if you really wanted it. But I did also read that the main character they had an addiction to Pepsi Cola, but they would drink like 300 or 500 Pepsis a day or something.
Oh my God.
Insane.
What teeth?
Right. I also read somewhere or heard that a lot of their stories involved or took place in Malibu, California, but the way they would write it just didn't make much sense. So they would describe tenement housing in Malibu, which doesn't make sense because for those who don't know, Malibu is a very rich area where celebrities live or vacation. I did Google it just to give some insight on this. So a median sale price of a home in Malibu is $4.3 million. Low income and tenement housing is not a thing there. So their writings just gave insight to how unattached to the real world they were.
I actually did read, I didn't read Pepsi Cola Addict or any copy of it, but I did read one of Jennifer's other books, The Pugilist, in college, and that was a trip. Short summary. A physician is eager to save his child's life, and he kills the family dog to take its heart for a heart transplant.
Oh my.
And the dog's spirit lives on through the heart in the child, and revenge kills the father for taking their heart. It's deeply disturbing. Saying that their writing was an insight into their brains it's. I know you don't like the word normal, but there was something decidedly not normal about that.
Yes. So, man, I didn't really dive too deep into their books because Pepsi Cola Addict.
Oh, don't.
Yeah,
Don't.
no.
Those are the light ones of her writings.
Yeah. The Pepsi Cola Addict, I think, is the only one. Well, no, I think June actually published a couple of books, but that I think is the most popular one. And then I know Jennifer wrote her own books, but she wasn't able to actually get them published how June was able to get hers published. So,
I find it interesting that they wrote, like, again, normal,
yeah.
but like, it's just weird.
Well, they didn't talk. So
Yeah.
instead of talking, they just write everything down and they would internalize so many things. So,
Huh.
and you'll see as we go through this, they start resenting each other. So, actually, the next thing, I'll just continue reading. So, during this time period in their lives, they were also making attempts to murder each other. Their paranoia would also grow. The older the girls got, the more violent they became. At one point, Jennifer tried to strangle June with a telephone cord, and in another incident, June tried to drown Jennifer in a nearby river. So they're escalating and they've isolated themselves so much that they can't reach out to anyone for help. So it's like they're trapped in their mind. It's incredibly sad. As the girls reached adulthood, writing was no longer satisfactory or a good escape for them. They started experimenting with drugs and alcohol. Substances gave them courage to act like normal teenagers would and even engaging in parties and boys. I literally have a note here saying I hate saying normal, by the way. What even is normal? These habits were picked up partially due to the boys they started hanging out with. June would say, quote, they introduced us to glue sniffing, smoking cigarettes, and drinking vodka by the bottle, end quote. These boys, I don't have this written down in my notes, but these boys were from America and they treated them like crap. They were just not nice to them, but it's attention that they were getting. So at some point in time, the boys had to go back to America and the girls asked for something to remember them by, and they sold them a jacket and a dirty sock.
Okay.
So it just
Sock I
like
hadn't heard about.
yeah. So they didn't respect them, but it's I guess the only, male attention that they were getting. And I think at one point in time the boys actually stuck up for them too. So it was kind of like a my hero type of situation. Jennifer lost her virginity in a church while her sister sat there and watched. She even wrote in her journal, quote, the secrets of love, passion, and sex are there all in my mind, like a string of golden flashes. Her sister had wrote down somewhere that, or she either wrote down or said that it's like she was seeing her sister for the first time, and that's how she must see her. The following week, June lost her virginity to the same boy. So they literally do everything together.
And everyone.
Oh, God.
Sorry.
I mean, you're not wrong. So at this point, they have started to ding dong ditch people, stealing bikes. And June said in an interview, quote, we were sort of saying, we'll ring the police and see if they can catch us. We'll smash a window. We'll set a fire to this and say, come and catch us if you can. We were trying things to try and get help. At one point, they did set fire to a tractor supply store, and that just sucks. They eventually did get caught as they were about to set fire to a school gymnasium. It said a security guard was suspicious of them and followed them around. Right before they set the fire, the guard yelled to stop, and the girls froze, matches in hand. Their fate was sealed when the police read their diaries and saw an entry made by June. On October 24th, 1981, June wrote, all this week I've wanted to burn down the tractor store and Snowdrop Lane. I burned it down today, with the help of Jay, of course. It was the biggest night of my life. Not that I'm trying to help any criminal by saying this, but the saying, say it and forget it, write it and regret it, is a saying for a reason, people. I'm glad that they got caught. I mean, who knows if they would have actually set fire to that school, how many people could have been hurt or died. So I'm happy they wrote it down and got caught, but it just sucks.
I get what you're saying. You leave an obvious trail. I know what you mean.
Yes. So
yeah, it would have escalated if they didn't get caught.
But
yes.
Kind of like she said, they were trying to get caught,
Yeah. She said that they were basically doing this to try to get help, but they were so isolated in their own minds that they couldn't go up to their parents and say, I need help. We need help. Please help us. The girls went to trial and pleaded guilty in 1982. They were expecting a sentence of about 6 months. However, they were sentenced indefinitely. I did see also that one of the guards would tell them like, "Oh, it's so much fun to go to like prison and there's pools and you can sunbathe." And, they were actually thinking, "Oh, this could be fun." Shortly after they were admitted to a maximum security prison named Broadmoor, sharing the high security psychiatric hospital with extremely dangerous criminals like the Yorkshire Ripper, Peter Sutcliffe. So there were some really, really, really dangerous people in this prison. And it sucks they were sentenced to this mental ward, because they refused to speak. I mean, they did need help. I'm not saying they didn't, but I don't think they deserve to be in the same place as murderers.
Well, they were sentenced under. I remember reading about this. It was the Mental Health Care Act of 1983 in Great Britain. It was kind of this sweeping set of legislation and laws for dealing with mentally criminal people. It's been amended over time, and there's reasons why. There were a lot of criticisms for it when many of the laws were first passed, and it was really kind of just how do I put? It was really just kind of really more just seen among mental health professionals at the time as just being this is just kind of more like social control, really, rather than trying to help. It was very restrictive. It was more we're just detaining dangerous people rather than doing anything about it.
Yes.
It wasn't really a good thing.
No, and the prison did not like their habit of not speaking and were determined to make them, quote, normal prior to releasing. The staff would actually tell them that they couldn't be released until they could start speaking and behaving as the average person does. So they were given a ton of antipsychotics and would describe their time there as miserable and hell. The amount of antipsychotics they were given would cause physical side effects like blurry vision, dizziness. They basically said it felt like, mentally they just weren't there. The twins were so miserable, they would send letters to the queen begging for pardons, which is so sad. This whole story is just sad.
They just ended up doping them for the most part, didn't they? Like, I remember reading they were just put on just huge doses of antipsychotics rather than...
While in prison, they were making progress and did start talking with the help of Marjorie Wallace. She read through their diaries, and Wallace discovered that June felt possessed by her sister, who she referred to as a dark shadow over her, while Jennifer's diaries revealed that she thought of June and herself as fatal enemies and described her sister as a face of misery, deception, and murder. Digging further into their past, it was discovered that the twins shared a deep bond, but also a deep hatred for each other. June seemed to be more scared of Jennifer, while Jennifer just seemed to be more annoyed with June's lack of symmetry. So this is Jennifer's quote. Jay is who she references for June. So Jay can't be my real twin. My real twin was born the exact time as me, has my rising sign, my looks, my ways, my dreams, my ambitions. He or she will have my weaknesses, failures, opinions. All this makes a twin, no differences. I can't stand differences. So I think Jennifer really had some, I'm not diagnosing her by any means, but like OCD tendencies at the very least. Like if there was any difference, it bothered her so much.
And obviously made her angry.
Yes.
It wasn't just like an annoyance. That's wild.
It's also been thought that Jennifer may have had what's called Capgras syndrome, or a delusion, or known as imposter syndrome, is a rare condition where a person is absolutely convinced that a loved one or other familiar person has been replaced by a completely identical imposter. Like they'll recognize the face, they'll recognize the voice, but they don't feel the emotional connection, sometimes to the extent of open hostility. And the belief is so real that nothing can correct that illusion in their mind. It's incurable. There are some treatments for it now, but it's not market improvement. Like I looked into this a little while ago. When it was interesting. There was a show, an episode of Law and Order where one of the actors on it supposedly had Capgras syndrome. So I looked into it, and there are videos of them reacting to the voice of the person that they believe is an imposter. But the minute they see their face, the change is just completely chilling. Just the lack of recognition and anger. They feel like they've been tricked. It's a really disturbing delusion.
There was something like that also on Chicago Med, an episode where a wife recognized the voice of her husband, but whenever she saw him, she attacked him because she thought he was a spy of some sort or something too. So
yep, that's Capgras delusion.
That is so scary.
That's one of the things that they think Jennifer had regarding her sister June is, well, I mean, like you read that quote about that's not my twin, it's not my real twin.
That wouldn't make sense as to why she describes her as a shadow as well. While their time in the facility they would develop the idea that they couldn't live with each other, and that one of them would need to die in order for the other to actually live their life to the fullest. And they even told this to Wallace. In 1993, the women were being transferred to a different facility. As they left the gates, Jennifer laid her head on June's shoulder and slipped into a coma to never wake up again. Autopsy and drug screens show that there were no substances in her system and that she died from a sudden swelling of the heart, which I read is something that isn't usually lethal. Some believe that Jennifer willed herself to death. June was devastated when her sister passed and vowed to live her life for the both of them. June also wrote the poem that's on the back of Jennifer's headstone, which reads, "We once were two, we two made one, we no more two, through life be one, rest in peace." And that is the story of June and Jennifer Gibbons, aka the Silent Twins. And I'm sure there's things in here that I did not touch on. Like I said, there's so much information about these girls. Some podcasts I've listened to have like a 20-minute episode, and then there's other podcasts that have 2-hour episodes.
We could spend hours just on their time in Broadmoor alone, and
oh yeah,
all of the testing and records of their treatments.
Do we know if there's like a, I want to say like a possession, demonic, like paranormal theory to this?
Well, there are some, because there were times in Broadmoor where the two were separated in different rooms, but they would still answer questions with the same words and even look through the walls and stealing to the other room where their twin was, even though they didn't know where they were.
Yeah, and they would also, I don't know how true this is, that's why I didn't mention it, but there were reports that one twin, they'd look in the room and they would be in a very specific, very weird pose, and they would go and look at the other twin in a different room. They've had no communication all day, and they would be in that exact same pose.
That is true. That was part of the records that Broadmoor kept of some of their, I don't know, oddities doesn't quite sum it up. And in terms of also like other paranormal, June kind of has gone back and from like gratitude to her sister to like she even said once, "I'm free at last, liberated. Jennifer has given up her life for me." Like it was a conscious decision, and June has stated more than once to this day that Jennifer agreed to die for her and made herself die. And it's like,
yes, like I said, there's thoughts that she willed herself to death because she had there were no drugs, no toxins, no anything that would have caused, and the swelling of her heart was not super uncommon for people to have happen, but it was incredibly rare for it to be a cause of death. So, the notes for this episode were very hard to keep organized. So, like, I'd already written all my notes, but I needed just a better outline. I told y'all that I rewrote my notes. But before I did that, I made this chart. I'm going to send y'all in the Discord. I'll make sure it's posted on our Instagram. Just a little timeline to help keep things straight, because man, is their story super confusing. So much documentation can be so helpful, but so confusing at the same time.
Yeah.
So, but they were very, very busy from 1974 to 1982.
Yeah, looks it.
I know there was a interview, I think it was in 2015 or 16 with their sister Greta. Apparently there was like they blamed Broadmoor for everything that happened. That Jennifer's death wasn't out of nowhere, that it was from their treatment at Broadmoor, even though there's absolutely no evidence of that whatsoever. And Greta apparently had wanted to file a lawsuit against Broadmoor, but their parents stopped her, saying that it wouldn't bring Jennifer back, and their parents didn't believe that it was Broadmoor responsible either. So I don't know. Make of that what you will.
Damn, she's still writing books.
Yeah. I believe it was in the 2006 or 7, she was no longer under psychiatric observation. like regular, like she wasn't incarcerated anymore or committed anywhere. She was released in 1994, and then around 2005, 2006, she was like no longer under observation. And yeah, she's done her best to put it behind her. Still writes. Still doesn't like to talk about Jennifer very much. Like I said, last interview was in 2016. It wasn't even with her; it was with her sister. Her more recent writing is significantly less disturbing than Jennifer's writing
Yeah, I
was.
was creeping her Instagram.
Oh, I didn't research that much to see if she had social media. I'm sure she's on some sort of therapy still, medication
Meds,
therapy.
yeah.
See, what always fascinated me about the two of them is, out of the two of them, Jennifer seemed to be decidedly the more psychotic one in terms of at least the way that she spoke, her journal entries. It wasn't June who called her sister fatal enemy, but it's Jennifer that decided to die for the sister she hated. That's the
I
part that
was
always.
gonna say the same thing. I'm surprised that Jennifer was the one who, quote, had to die.
But I guess there is that whole quote about her shadow. Wait, did you? I can't remember. Did you read that one? Let me find it. I got it here. It was in Jennifer's diary. We have become fatal enemies in each other's eyes. We feel the irritating, deadly rays come out of our bodies, stinging each other's skin. I say to myself, can I get rid of my own shadow? Impossible or not possible. Without my shadow, would I die? Without my shadow, would I gain life, or be free, or left to die? Without my shadow, which I identify with a face of misery, deception, and murder. So she hated her sister, but also like, if I killed her, would it do anything?
Mm-hmm. I
Hmm.
didn't read that entire quote, but I did reference her calling her sister a dark shadow, a face of misery, deception, and murder.
Like we said, we could do hours on this topic and not be
Yes.
done with it.
Yes, yes. So I hope I did it justice. I think I hit on a lot of the more
The main points, kind of the
Yes.
basic story arc.
Yes, you can feel free to do your own research on this because it's a lot.
I mean,
It's a lot.
it's emotionally heavy stuff. I'll give that warning.
Yes, yes, but okay. Do we want to do outro?
Outro time. Do you want me to do
Yes,
Sure.
you can.
it? Okay. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. As always, you can find any pictures pertaining to this story posted on our Instagram and Twitter at CYRTpod. Be sure to rate and review us wherever you listen. If you have a topic suggestion or want to share a story, send us an email at cyrtpod@gmail.com. Until next time, happy listening.